Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Here.
Thank you.
She's reading the consent calendar. Who's it?
Porcello. Nothing yet.
Could it be possible that Faye is talking to Mario someplace?
She is.
She is?
Right here?
I think
No, I think they're downstairs in his office.
Clerk, if you'll please call the roll and read the prepared statement.
December 12, 2017. Please be advised this meeting has been taped for video, is being taped for video and audio broadcast. Assisted listening devices are available. Mr. Burnett,
Present.
Mr. Porcello,
Here.
Mr. Sacchinelli,
Here.
Ms. Smith. Here. Mr. Stern,
Here.
Ms. Melendez,
Here.
Mr. Ioannidis,
Here.
Ms. Bowman, Mr. Sims,
Present.
Mr. Coyotes,
Here.
Ms. Siegelbaum,
Here.
Mr. Hempstead,
Here.
Mr. Serenides.
Here.
It all sounds the same to me. Sorry, George.
No, that's right. You did good.
Mr. Igneri,
Here.
Mr. Livingston,
Here.
14 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, acceptance of the minutes, regular meeting, November 14th, 2017. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Igneri moves. Any corrections, deletions, additions? Mr. Corsello?
I believe Mr. Burnett had a
Sure.
correction.
Not for this meeting.
Not this set of minutes.
I apologize.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 abstentions of the new council people who weren't present at the meeting. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, acceptance of the minutes, regular meeting, November 21st, 2017. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Mr. Livingston moves. Corrections, additions, deletions. Mr. Burnett.
Yes, just one correction on page 404, under the paragraph where it begins, Ms. Bowman asked if we look into creating the position, that should be corrected, creating the position, and then it should go further on to say the deputy majority leader and deputy minority leader to finish off the sentence.
Correct. Any further corrections, additions, deletions? Seeing none, all in favor of the minutes as corrected? All opposed? Abstentions? So, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, public participation. Ms. King.
Diane Lauricella.
Good evening, Diane Lauricella, 21 Blue Mountain Ridge Road. First of all, welcome and congratulations to all of you that won election. I stand ready to help you when you want to in order to help you find people that you can speak with on issues that are important to our city. I'm here on behalf of myself. The role of a council person is such an important role. And those in leadership positions especially, but also the rest of you all have a duty to do your due diligence for a proactive government. Personnel selections need your due diligence, and this is the time to do so. I'm here tonight because I am asking that you give the new council members and those that are the new chair people of select committees, especially personnel and health, safety, and welfare, be given the chance to do their due diligence tonight, and that you send back to committee or table the following positions. Now, this is of no personal nature. For instance, I have met the person that is tonight being planned to be put forth to you for a vote for the health director. And this woman is a very good and nice person. I've already explained to her that I'm here tonight about process. And I feel we have to change the paradigm because, in my opinion, the previous health director left out an important part of Norwalk's needs, which is environmental health, toxic waste site review. We can no longer allow passing the buck up to the state. They don't have enough staff. So we need eyes and ears on the ground, and we need the staff to be allowed to handle these issues in the manner that we citizens expect. I took time to look at the Personnel Committee minutes and agendas for the last year, and even a little bit into 2016, as well as Health, Safety, and Welfare minutes and agenda. There has been no discussion of any of these positions. I have the proof, and I'm hoping you will do your due diligence. You deserve it, especially the new members who are on the Personnel Committee and Health, Safety, and Welfare. I am also opposed to taking just out of a unilateral, seemingly unilateral decision to have a communications director instead of a grants manager. Now, I haven't had the time to find out what happened to the former grants manager, and that position should pay for itself in other cities and towns. We should have more than one person doing it, and I'm not happy that this communications person would have a different role and not enough time and our money spent on looking for grants. We're squandering opportunities that other cities and towns are getting on various grants. Lastly, as far as the program manager for the walk bridge, I just ask, have you had time to determine whether the process for selection was competitive? Do we need an engineer to be in this position? Again, nothing personal against Ms. Prosy, who I've known when she was at SWRPA. It's just that, again, to rush to judgment to a decision that the new members need, and some members that I did get to speak with, because unfortunately I just found out about all of these appointments tonight, they said, I'm new, I don't know what I could say. Well, you can ask. As
You're
a new,
at 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
I'll wrap it up in 5 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that is, you have the right to ask something to be tabled. There's a vote. You have the right to ask for turning something back to committee, and I'm hoping very soon there is good training of our council folks so that we all can work together and do our due diligence. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Deborah Goldstein.
Deborah Goldstein, 66 Osborne. I all too would like to congratulate all of the new electees to the Common Council. Welcome aboard. You may or may not consider yourselves lucky to be here. And also to thank you once again for the opportunity to speak. It's valuable to be able to have public participation, and we forget to mention it from time to time. I'm here to address one and only one item, 7F1. This is the item dealing with the community block grants that are being repurposed for the business mitigation in connection with the walk bridge, but it is on the agenda with the rather cryptic item labeled approve the amended language in the PY44 NOFA. Nearly missed it because all the capital letters look like everything else on the agenda. What I wanted to do was just make a couple of observations. One, I would hope, according to the media, the Chamber has been engaged in the idea of reaching out to businesses that might be eligible to apply for this money. I would hope that, given that East Norwalk was also identified as an area that's going to have significant business impacts from the walk bridge, that ENBA, the East Norwalk Business Association, which is the Chamber of Commerce for the East Norwalk business community, is also engaged similarly. I also wanted to ask, or I would hope you would address during discussion at the time you go to vote, not answer me directly at this time, whether it is correct to understand that since these are federal HUD dollars being administered by the redevelopment agency, whether it is even possible for East Norwalk businesses that are not in the redevelopment area to be eligible for these funds. Because if they're not, then you're leaving out a significant portion of the impacted business community. I applaud the effort. It's strange to use federal dollars to address mitigation that was promised to us by the state in response to the letter to the governor that the mayor had written. But so be it. Getting creative in times of lean dollars does make sense. However, if this particular venue leaves out East Norwalk, I would urge you to consider that it is not the whole solution. And then I would just like to suggest to everybody that the application process and the eligibility for these funds be very public, very clear, over-communicated, so that everybody has an equal shot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is resignations, appointments, and reappointments. The first item, a resignation, Glenn A. Iannacone from the Historical Commission for job-related reasons. And I want to thank Mr. Iannacone for not only his service as a longtime firefighter, but a member of the board of, the Common Council and other services that he has provided for the city over the years. And I'm sure we'll have him back when it's the right time. First appointment, Mr. James P. Frayer for the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Do I have a motion? Mr. Igneri?
I'm pleased and honored to move Mr. Frayer for the position of Board of Estimate and Taxation. I've known Jim for a number of years. I know him as a very detail-oriented gentleman, but I'd like to read one item from his resume. There, he's responsible for managing the allocation of a global $8 billion budget of shared services and expenses. I think if he's had enough experience in many years managing an $8 billion budget, he will do a great job on our $375 million budget.
A meager budget.
Well, I'm also hoping he'll help us grow it to $8 billion. So, thank you. I move Mr. Frayer.
Thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Livingston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to add my support to Mr. Frayer's nomination as well. I've known him for many years. I know he is aside from the qualifications that Mr. Igneri just mentioned, he's obviously very qualified in that way, but he's also been very involved in the community, including the audit committee of the 6th Taxing District, which I hope you don't need, but and also being director treasurer of the board of Hilltop Homes. So I think he'd be a great addition.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations, Mr. Frayer. Next item on the agenda, Mr. Troy Jelleret, Board of Estimate and Taxation. Do I have a motion? Mr. Livingston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm honored to be able to nominate Troy J. K. Jelleret to the Board of Estimate and Taxation. As we all see from the resume, he's obviously very well qualified, having held senior financial positions with KeyBank, JP Morgan, Chase, as well as Citibank. And also, I think equally important is that he's been very active in the community. He's always involved in many different activities. He's also been a member of the Norwalk Parking Authority, as well as on the board of directors of the Norwalk Education Foundation. I think he'd be a great addition.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Will carry. Congratulations, Mr. Jelleret. Next item on the agenda is the appointment of Mr. Artie Kasimis to the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Do I have a motion? Mr. Hempstead.
I'd like to move Artie Kasimis to the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Certainly will bring a different perspective, having served all the years on the Board of Education. See how he does from the other side, as they say. And it certainly wouldn't, considering his present occupation, I guess a prayer before a meeting start wouldn't hurt anybody anyhow, on the Board of Estimate and Taxation. But he's worked hard for the community. He's been involved with the community a lot and had a good service record with the Board of Education.
Thank you. Further discussion? Heidi's.
I just want to chime in. I know Mr. Kasimis has been very fiscally responsible on the Board of Ed, one of the very few I've found over the years. So hopefully you can carry that on into the the BET, and I definitely support this nomination.
Thank you. Mr. Corsello.
No, I
Well, somebody else over there, raise their hand.
do support Mr. Kasimis.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations, Mr. Kasimis. Next item on the agenda is the reappointment of Edwin Camacho to the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Do I have a motion? Ms. Melendez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move Edwin Camacho to the Board of Estimate and Taxation. He is no stranger to this group as our chairman. He's been an attorney for over 30 years, and he's been a member of the BET since 2014, and I think he's done a great job of representing our taxpayers, and I think he will continue to do a great job, and I urge my colleagues to support him.
Thank you. Further discussion?
I just chime in support of that. I know Ed, and not only through his public service, but as a fellow attorney, he's a colleague. Board of Estimate is one of the most difficult, but one of the most important positions in the city. You need somebody who's intelligent, insightful, and principled, and Ed is all of those things. I'm very glad he's willing to take this on. I know he'll do a good job.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Congratulations. Next item on the agenda, Mayor's remarks.
Want me to swear them in?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Would all of you who had just been reappointed or appointed come down, and the city clerk will administer the oath of office to all of you, so we'll make it legal.
We're going to do it all at once.
We'll do the three
I'll do the
first,
three.
and then Ed by himself because it's a reappointment.
Okay.
Just
Nice that you were
I'll get a nice picture for you.
You, having been appointed as a member of the Board of Estimate and Taxation of the City of Norwalk, do solemnly swear or affirm that you will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office according to your best skill and judgment, so help you God, or upon the pains and penalties of perjury.
Yeah, your text.
Congratulations. Dave, welcome aboard.
Two
Troy,
copies.
welcome aboard.
Mr. Frey,
Congratulations.
Mr. Jelleret.
And you now.
Yes. Okay. You'll sign.
Sign both and then give us one back.
sign it.
He's already
Congratulations.
changing your mind already?
Fine, thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
And you want to do Ed now?
Signed up again, huh?
Sign two copies here?
Yeah, the sabbaticals, okay.
Sign two copies and keep one.
Congratulations.
Edwin?
Everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, it's always nice to see you.
Don't give the Board of Ed anything.
Congratulations.
You, Edwin, come out.
Get a few prayers before we,
As a member of
they need it with the escape button this year.
the City of Norwalk, do solemnly swear or affirm that you will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office according to your best skill and judgment, so help you God, or upon the pains and penalties of perjury.
Congratulations.
Keep one.
My signature is the only one in the world that's legible. I know, lawyers or doctors.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, mayor's comments, mayor's remarks. As most of you know or have heard, last night we had a devastating fire at 100 Richards Avenue, and dozens of families and people were displaced. They are in need of assistance. I know the fire department, through the emergency management director, is having fundraising and ways that you can help out. It'll probably be on our city website if it's not already. There are other things on Facebook where you can buy gift cards or some other form of help, whether it's non-perishable food items, clothing. Most of the people on the left side of the building lost everything. And the firefighters, I want to congratulate our firefighters for the manner in which they conducted that operation. I went up there. It was very frightening to see the flames coming out of the building, not knowing whether anyone was in the building. Our firefighters and police officers entered the building while the flames were going through the roof to evacuate, to make sure people knew that they had to leave. They also went back in after it was a little bit more safe, a little bit safer, and they brought out animals, pets that were inside, pets that meant something to the homeowners who were so concerned, that not only more concerned about losing their pets and their family friend than they were about losing their worldly goods. So at this time of the year, when most of us are, well, we're ready to celebrate the holidays, please keep these people in your hearts, your thoughts, your prayers, and other people who perhaps are less fortunate than us. It's a time of the year that we as Americans, and certainly we as Norwalk residents, step up and make sure that we help those who are less fortunate than us. And certainly this time of the year makes it even more appropriate that we consider that. We had, I'm not sure which age group, and I apologize for that, but we had another national champion group in the city of Norwalk. Norwalk Packer cheerleaders. I'm not sure whether it's under 12, under 8, what unit they are, but they went down to Florida and they competed. They won Connecticut, they won the regionals, and they won the national championship, again putting Norwalk on the map, just like our Norwalk Bears, who were national champions a couple of weeks ago at MetLife Stadium. So we just want to recognize them. We will be recognizing the Norwalk High School Marching Bears as well as the Packer cheerleaders for their accomplishments. They put a lot of time, a lot of energy into what they do, but it couldn't be done without the parents and the support of the school system and the parents. So again, congratulations to the champion Packers. Last but not least, tonight being the first day of Hanukkah, I want to wish all our Jewish friends a very, very happy Hanukkah, healthy, happy, prosperous 2018. And because this is the last meeting that we'll have this month, certainly want to wish my colleagues on the board a happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, and to all of you out there as well, God bless you all, and thank you. Mr. Kites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we get moving on the consent calendar, with every new council, there are commissions and authorities that require either council membership or council appointees. So get this little piece of business out of the way. I've spoken to the minority party, aka Mr. Hempstead, and he has allowed me to make these announcements on his behalf. I'll start with the authorities and commissions that do not require a vote, but just require a announcement. First, we'll start with the Water Pollution Control Authority. As DPW Chair, Mr. Igneri. As Council President, I will be appointing John Bovey, who currently sits on the WPCA, and the minority party chooses Vincent Capozzoli. Moving on to the Norwalk Facilities Construction Commission, Mr. Livingston and Mr. Hempstead. Now moving on to the Maritime Authority, which does require a council vote. There it's Mr. Igneri, Mr. Sims, Ms. Bowman, and Mr. Hempstead has chosen Shannon O'Toole Gianderco, one of our former council members. So all in favor of approving those names as read, please raise your hand. Looks to be unanimous. Great. Last but not least, Historical Commission. This also does require the vote of the council, and I would like to nominate Tom Livingston. All in favor of Tom Livingston for the Historical Commission, please raise your hand. Great, looks unanimous as well. Okay. Now moving on, the consent calendar. We're going to keep in tradition with rotating names in alphabetical order. And first up to read the consent calendar would be Ms. Bowman.
The consent calendar for tonight reads item 7A1A, Resolved that Harry W. Rilling, Mayor of the City of Norwalk, being hereby authorized to execute on behalf of this municipal corporation a personal services agreement with the State of Connecticut for financial assistance to complete improvements to Mill Hill Historical Park, Project CPAP 2016-10. Item 7A1B, resolved that Harry W. Rilling, Mayor, is hereby authorized to enter into such agreements, contracts, and execute all documents necessary to said grant with the State of Connecticut. Item B1, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to sign the City of Norwalk's Emergency Medical Services Plan as required by the State Department of Public Health, CGS 10A1A1B. This plan will be in effect from 2017 to 2022 and reviewed and updated annually by fire, police, and EMS representatives. Item B2A, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute any and all documents necessary to apply for and accept grant funds from the City of Stamford for the purpose of providing special supplemental nutrition services in accordance with the Connecticut WIC program plan for the contract period October 1, 2017 through December 31st, 2017. Item B2B, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute any and all agreements, documents, instruments, or amendments as may be necessary to implement WIC program services for the period October 1, 2017 through December 31st, 2017. Item C1, consent to table back to committee the naming of the City Hall Drive as Honorable Frank J. Esposito Way in memory of Mayor Frank J. Esposito, to set a public hearing on February 6, 2018 at 7 p.m. in room 225, Norwalk City Hall. Item C2, authorize the retention of Susan Prosy Johnson as program manager representing the City of Norwalk for the Walk Bridge project, reporting to the mayor's office in accordance with letter dated November 30th, 2017. Account is noted. Item C3A, actually I'll read item C3B first. Rescind Common Council action of May 9, 2017. Item 7C1, which authorized the following. 1, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Ty and Bond for its engineering services for the Rowayton Pond Dam project for a sum not to exceed $20,000. The account is noted. Then I'll go back to item 3A. Authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute a first amendment to the June 5, 2017 contract with Ty and Bond Inc. to provide professional engineering services relative to investigating deficiencies and options for the portion of the Norwalk levee located south of the Perry Avenue Bridge adjacent to the Norwalk River, to add an amount not to exceed $20,000 for a regulatory inspection of the Rowayton Pond Dam, and the account is noted. Item D1, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to accept the assistance agreement by and between the State of Connecticut acting by the Connecticut Port Authority and the City of Norwalk for the floating dock replacement capital project. Account is noted at Veterans Memorial Park, Seaview Avenue, Norwalk, Connecticut. The assistance agreement is in the amount of $908,250. And then item F1, approve the amended language in the PY 44 NOFA. And that is the consent calendar.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Okay, all in favor of accepting approving the consent calendar as read, please raise your hand. Looks to be unanimous, great. Before I pass it back to you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just make an announcement that the December 26th council meeting will be canceled due to the holidays, and so everyone, happy holidays. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you very much. 6A1, was that on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was on consent? Okay.
No, it's not on consent.
It's not on consent.
6.
Okay, 6A1, Mr. Kites.
Approve the proposed City of Norwalk's Freedom of Information Indigency Policy. I believe there were some questions. Ms. Bowman, I believe you had some questions in regards to this?
Or I can handle it, or Mr. Capola can handle it. We found, if we probably could have considered to amend, but we would, you want to?
pass it? Well, just that, and we apologize because we were both a little bit late because we were printing these documents before the meeting. But there was a document that Ms. Bowman found, I think presented by the Connecticut Judicial Branch, that talks about, in the case of the Connecticut Judiciary, for certain programs, they calculate 125% of the federal poverty level, to take into account that Connecticut is different than other states in the country. So Ms. Bowman suggested that we amend the indigency standard to replace where it says the federal poverty standard with 125% of the federal poverty standard. So if you want to say a few more things, I'm just going to pass out these documents.
If Ms. Bowman would make the motion for that.
So I would like to make a motion to amend the indigency policy under section 1, I guess A. So it says, a member of the general public shall be considered to be indigent if such person has total income after paying all of applicable taxes of equal to or less than the federal poverty level. We would like to amend that to equal to or less than 125% of the federal poverty level. And that's the motion.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion?
I think that makes sense. I mean, the federal poverty level is considerably lower around the country than the poverty level around here, and that's only fair.
Any further discussion?
Before we vote, I did have a question from Mr. Coppola. I note that if a person is found to be indigent, they can only request 300 copies every 45 days. And I just question the fairness of that. Is that permissible under FOI?
Yeah, because I think it's, yes, one of the concerns was where somebody does qualify that they make unreasonable requests because there's no cost associated with the request.
So to me, it seems sort of like if somebody's found to be indigent, they don't have the same right to request documents under FOI as other individuals, and that's permissible under the Act?
We believe so, yes. We believe that the limitation is appropriate. And then also, the limitation does not prevent somebody from requesting more than 300 documents. It just puts a temporal limit on it, so you can only request so many within 45 days.
Right, whereas a person who wasn't indigent doesn't have that same limit. That was my concern. But if you're telling me it's not a violation of the Act, I'll defer to you.
And by the way, generally, it does take time to produce documents, so the larger the request, the more time it's going to take anyway. So, for example, if somebody makes a request that exceeds 300 pages, I think there's some discretion to provide, and they qualify as being indigent. Certainly, there's some discretion to give, if it's 350 pages, more than 300. But in the case where somebody is requesting 1,000 documents, 1,000 pages worth of documents, quite often it takes a decent amount of time anyway, so it's not as if they're really going to have to wait 45 days, because if a member of the general public who is not determined to be indigent makes a request, it may take, for example, 10, 15 days to get the documents anyways, if it's a significant request.
If somebody who is indigent needs 1,000 documents, they have to request them in increments of 300 every 45 days. Or someone who wasn't indigent wouldn't have that prohibition.
Somebody who's indigent is going to make the request. They're not necessarily going to know how many pages it is, and so we would work with them in that regard.
Mike, speaking to Mr. Crisella, speaking to the mic.
I apologize.
Everybody hearing this.
Typically, with the FOIA request, especially if it's a significant one, it takes time to find the documents. It takes time to find the documents that are being requested. So in a case where you have a request that yields over 300 pages, under normal circumstances, I would assume that request would take more than a few days to fulfill. It may take a week, 2 weeks, depends.
Well, if you're saying in practice it doesn't make a difference, why do we have that prohibition written into our indigency policy?
The concern was if somebody was determined to be indigent, that they would make requests without any consideration whatsoever of the costs. And I think that most people, regardless of how much money they have, will take into account the cost when they're making a request. So people quite often say, I'm requesting the following documents. By the way, before you go ahead and produce them to me, could you please tell me what the cost is? Maybe I can narrow down the request. That happens quite often. Or you can provide them to me in electronic format so that I don't have to pay costs, et cetera. So The
That makes
concern,
sense.
the concern was that if somebody's indigent, they're going to request thousands of documents, so the idea is to put some limit on it. Now, having said that, I think the concept of having a limit makes sense, but the limitation could be changed. So if you feel that 300 pages isn't enough, maybe you increase it to 400 or 500. Quite frankly,
My
that
question was it permit, does the
We-
act
we
itself
believe-
permit you to put that kind of limitation?
Yeah, I mean, we discussed it. We believe it's permissible based on our research, having an analysis. Having said that, the determination of, I think you said it was 300 pages, is subjective. So if you feel that it should be more, that's fine to increase it. Just as Ms. Bowman suggested that we not use the standard of the federal poverty level, but that we use a different standard, and she found just today a document from the judiciary saying that they, for some programs, use 125% of the federal poverty level. So this is a policy, and certainly there's no right or wrong answers with regard to some of the issues. So if you think
If
you
it's
should...
permissive to put a limitation on it, let's go with 300. If we find it to be problematic, we can always revisit it.
That's a good point. You could always come back and increase it to whatever number you think is appropriate.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, do you have, or are you aware of what the average number of pages requested has been over time?
No, I mean, I'm looking at a few of our reporters here. They may have a better perspective, quite frankly, than I do, because they do a lot more FOIA requests. But I think most requests would yield significantly less than 300 pages.
That's my question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think that unless it's a lawsuit of some sort, that with lots of court documents and depositions, that it would be a lot less than 300.
Yeah, then I would agree with Mr. Corsella that we should maybe put this in and revisit it if we need to.
Any further discussion? Then we'll vote on the amendment as proposed by Ms. Bowman. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Now we'll vote on the motion. Item, okay, 6A1. The proposed City of Norwalk's Freedom of Information Indigency Policy as amended. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Mr. Sims, in favor?
No, I oppose.
Opposed, okay. So 14 in favor, 1 opposed. Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is, if I can find my agenda. Ms. Bowman, item 7E, 1 and 2.
Yeah, so there hasn't been a personnel meeting, so I just wanted to pull this off so we could get a little bit of discussion on this item. So basically, we will be asked to appoint a director for the Department of Health. And before we do that,
Are you going to move the item?
Oh, I'll move the item?
All right, yeah, you move the item and then we have discussion.
Okay, I'll move the item.
Okay. And now Ms. Bowman.
Okay, awesome. I do not know this individual, but I've heard of this individual from the previous health department director who spoke highly of her. She was in a grant-funded position before. She then left, but did apply for the position once it was vacant of health director. We do have Mr. Burney here, who is the personnel director, here to speak a little bit about the interview process and any other details.
Sure. My name is Ray Burney. For those of you that I haven't met yet, I'm the Director of Personnel and Labor Relations for the city. In selecting Deanna Diamore as our candidate for your approval tonight, we went through an extensive process, recruitment, solicitation process. We interviewed 4 candidates. We had posted in Career Builder, Indeed, Glassdoor, Monster, the State Department of Public Health, the National Association of County and City Health Officials, and got resumes from as far away as Africa for this position. We selected the 4 best candidates. We had an all-star panel that interviewed them, made up of 2 of the commissioners on the Norwalk City Board of Health and 3 of the surrounding town directors of health, myself and Leisha King. We interviewed the 4 candidates, and Ms. Diamore was by far the best candidate to fulfill the needs of the city's health department. We believe that she is more than capable and will hit the ground running, having worked here before and having been exposed to the issues and concerns in the city, and the panel fully endorsed and supported her as the candidate.
Mr. Burnett.
Yes, I'd like to also comment on Ms. Diamore's candidacy. As a member of the Board of Health, I had the opportunity to work with her directly during the time frame that we were pursuing the accreditation for the Health Department, and she led that in a very powerful and successful manner, in that we were one of the few communities that now have that accreditation. In my opinion, she displayed excellent communication and project management skills, which were very vital to reaching out to departments internally as well as externally to the Board of Health in order to complete this accreditation. I was also very impressed with her ability to reach out into the community during the time frame that we were working on our quality improvement plan, and to understand what the needs of the community are in relation to our health concerns. And I felt that was very important. So her background clearly supports her commitment to quality, team building, as well as serving the Norwalk community. So I think we're very fortunate to have her come on board and fill the vacancy by a very outstanding, in my opinion, Board of Director of our Health Department, in Tim Callahan. So I fully support her candidacy.
Further discussion?
Deanna is here if you'd like her to come down and answer any questions, too.
Yeah. Okay.
Would you like to come down?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you for your kind words.
I can start if you know. How are you?
I'm great. I'm good.
So we do have your resume here. I guess if you can just for the sake of the community, and because we didn't have a personnel meeting, just briefly. You don't have to just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are interested in the position, and what are your goals for the department, for short-term, long-term.
Sure. So I've been working in public health practice for over 10 years. Most of my focus has been on administration, accreditation, quality improvement, performance management, as well as policy development and then data analysis, and working with the community on identifying the needs. I loved being in Norwalk. I loved being at the department. The staff is incredible. They're so talented. They're so smart. They're so committed. So it's an amazing place to work. It has a long history of collaborating with other community agencies, with community members, being really innovative and trying to find new ways to address health needs. So it's such an amazing place to work, and I want to be a health director. I like how your job is never the same every day. One day you could be analyzing data, the next you could be working with community members, the next you could be working on a policy, developing a law. So it's just a really interesting job. It's an important job. So I'm very passionate about public health and all areas of public health.
And so, first, I represent South Norwalk. We have our health issues vary. So we just basically just want to make a statement, and I'll keep it brief. Like some of the things we look forward to working with you in our community. We have environmental issues, health issues that we always reach out to the department for. So we're just looking forward to you being a partner with the whole city, but also definitely with South Norwalk.
Absolutely. I just want to let you know I have a background in working on health disparities, health equity projects. I have an anthropology degree and bachelor's of arts in anthropology, so I understand the social, environmental, the economic conditions that impact health, so absolutely.
Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, then I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations and welcome. Ms. Bowman, next item on the agenda is 7E2,
Yes, approve establishment of new position, communications manager, ordinance position. And so I'd like to move the item.
item's been moved. Would you like discussion?
Sure. And so basically what is happening here is there is going to be, and I'll let Mr. Burney also speak more, but there will be an elimination of the grants manager position, but this position will encompass those duties as well as several others.
Right. The grants manager position was empty when I got here last April. Boy, it seems so long ago. And over that time, we've been monitoring the workflow from that office, and various people have been doing some of the work as it went along, but we came to the conclusion that there's enough room in that day-to-day work to do, that day-to-day position to do more. So we started looking around the city for other needs we had. We identified a communications need, a communications manager need to centralize the outreach to the public, the response to the public, the coordinated message from City Hall to the public, and we looked at combining the responsibilities of the grant administrator and a communications manager, and that's the document you have in front of us. The intention is that this person will do all of the grants administration application work that was previously done, and will in addition, perform the communications responsibilities that we have laid out here. There's absolutely no intention to ignore or reduce our opportunity to go and get grant money. That person will be responsible for this, just like the prior person was, but we saw that there was an opportunity to add some responsibilities in the day-to-day work life of that person, so we put together this position description, and we're going to bring it in at a little bit of a lower level than Grant's position was. The city should save $30,000 or so in annual salary on filling this position, so we look to you to approve the establishment of this position.
Mr. Corsello.
Yeah, at first blush, when I read the backup, it indicated that we were basically sort of eliminating the position of grants writer. And
That's right.
I've since learned, and correct me if I'm wrong, we never really had a grants writer. Our departments write their own grants. This was more of a grants coordinator, so we're not losing a grants writer?
I think that's correct, to the best of my knowledge, yes.
Each department, and I can answer that as well, the grants coordinator would do some grant research, would use a template-based approach for most grants, would assist a department individual such as fire, police, DPW, with formulating the grant document and applying for the grant. A lot of times grants will come through my email, and I will forward it to the grants coordinator or to a department and ask for feedback as to whether or not they think this is something we should be applying for. Once that happens, the grants coordinator will work with the department to help facilitate the application process, and then will also help with the reporting that's required. So reports have to be on a quarterly basis on some grants, annual basis on another grant, and so that was the function that this person would be doing. So, and the communications manager position, if it's approved, will be doing that job as well as the managing communications, releases from the mayor's office to the public, a dashboard project that we're working on those kinds of things. Mr. Hempstead.
A couple of things, and I'm about process, along with wondering why the rush and this didn't go committee, because now we're going to wind up doing committee work on the floor. Just a couple of questions. I don't understand why the rush. If we're trying to create a new position, and I think there is a process in our ordinance for ordinances adding and subtracting, and that's something I'm going to ask the legal department at some point to do some research to see if this is the proper process, because days gone by, and I may have forgotten, or things may have changed. This used to have to go to a public hearing because you're adding someone to the ordinance list, and then you're proposing, but it's not in here, removing someone from the ordinance list, and there is a process for that. Normally, this would go to Personnel Committee and have a probably in-depth discussion. And there's also a reference in here, again, I see this frequently, reports to Chief of Staff. Underneath the ordinance list, there is no Chief of Staff on our ordinance list. The position does not exist.
That was my mistake, that's a typo.
Okay, well, all right, and there's no elimination of the office until there's nothing here proposed eliminating the office. It's a suggestion, but there's another part of that. So coming from my angle and my experience with this stuff, and sometimes the stuff gets rushed for different reasons, and I like to err on the side of caution. There's two things I'd like to ask. I'd like to get at some point an opinion from the a review of the process necessary to create a position on the ordinance list and to remove a person from the ordinance. Let's make sure, if we're going to do it, at least do it, get it right. And in the meantime, a motion to table this back, not table this, so there's going to be discussion, a motion to send it back to the next Personnel Committee.
It's my understanding that the process that we're doing here is consistent with the ordinance because we're not eliminating the grant writer position. We are simply adding duties onto that and changing the title. And the notion of a rush is this. We came to the conclusion that we should do this sometime back in September or so. But between the election and the hiring freeze, we put it off and we kept putting it off. And until now, the first real meeting of the Common Council after the election, after the hiring freeze, we thought this was our opportunity to bring it to the council for their consideration, because we've been thinking about doing this since the end of the summer.
Want to comment on the process? Mr. Hempstead?
Well, I mean, you have to ask the chairman. I don't recall this ever being discussed in the Personnel Committee from September until Election Day, and we did have a couple of meetings in between that. That chair can verify that or not. I may have missed something. But it does say eliminate the position of grants writer, and I want to correct some misnomer of why that position was created, because that position was created under Mayor Moshe and was actually the first grant writer that worked for the city of Norwalk. Yes, the fire department did theirs, police department did theirs, redevelopment did some of theirs, but we never really had a true grant writer for the rest of the city of Norwalk, and that's why that was established. Most cities like Stanford have 3. Other cities even have more, because there's a lot of federal funding and other kinds of grants that they're right for. And I certainly think it's worth a discussion on eliminating a position that was established, and the first one ever established, to kind of focus on seeking new grants other departments are. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like a motion to send it back to committee.
Motion to send it back to committee. Well, we would, any discussion first on that motion? Ms. Bowman?
Yeah, so I'm the personnel chair, did not come to committee. I don't know, I did ask and I did get the response that it was time sensitive. I don't know, does anybody, can we get some more elaboration on the time sensitivity and whether or not, a January or something decision is doable or?
Well, I said to you that it was time sensitive because, as I just said to the other councilman, that we've been toying with this idea since late summer, and we didn't bring it to Personnel Committee or to the Common Council because of all those intervening factors. But it's an initiative that we wanted to get rolling for the first of the year so we can get moving on doing some of the functions and tasks that we foresee this person doing. So we didn't want to delay any longer than we had to.
And is a January too late? Now, and my well, I'm looking at, I got my explanation yesterday, and the title is very narrow, and there are a lot of interesting things in the job description. One thing that stands out to me is I actually, it is great that we're saving $35,000, but it almost seems like it's pretty low for what you're asking the person to do. So I do see there are some things that, I think you probably could kind of flesh out. So, and I don't know if we want to work on it here or not, but you're asking this person to do a lot. so I work with data, and I can see you got a data job is a highly paid job. So you're asking them to analyze data and manage data, and then be communications, and then doing grant writing. So it's kind of a low salary for the person. So that's something that for me, I mean, we may not want to go up to where the last salary was, but it's like you said, you found more roles for the person to play, but then you cut the salary down. So I do think it's interesting. I don't really have a problem with the position, but I think that there are things in here that we could work on.
Mr. Livingston, and then Ms. Melendez.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with Mr. Capola in terms of that comment Mr. Hempstead made about the legal process in terms of eliminating position or adding position, whether that was followed here, in your opinion?
My understanding was that there was not an elimination and an addition of a position, but rather what was discussed for a while was changing the duties associated with the grants writer position. Quite frankly, I believe what has been discussed for a while was that the feeling that there could be more out of that position, that instead of getting a separate communications director, unlike other cities, Norwalk doesn't have a PR director or communications director. I think it was something that the mayor's assistant or chief of staff brought up when she and that's why I said when she came on board, having been in New Haven, was surprised that there wasn't anybody who had the official duties assigned to them associated with PR communications for the city. So I think that's how the discussion began, and my understanding was that this was really just changing the duties of the existing position. I didn't understand it to be the removal of a position, an ordinance position, nor the addition of an ordinance position. In fact, my understanding was that person maybe even in the same office that the grants writer position was in. So again, my understanding was that it was more just changing that position to add some additional duties.
So you're okay with it?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think it's the removal or addition of a position. I've never understood it to be that to be the case. I don't know what was drafted for all of you to review. I didn't, quite frankly, take a look at it. If it refers to the removal and addition of a position, I think that's incorrect, and it wasn't. I just don't think that's accurate, based on my understanding of what's being done.
If I could just add a follow-up question for Mr. Burney. How did you come up with the salary range?
We thought that we could recruit the appropriate candidate for this position in that salary range, and this is one of the salary ranges that's already established on the ordinance list of salary ranges.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Melendez.
My question was more to, again, like to Ms. Bowman's point about it being time sensitive, and I don't disagree with the position. I think it's long overdue. But is it time sensitive because of the need to find someone, or, I mean, I'm assuming it hasn't been posted for, or like what?
No, it's not a position, so we have not
Okay.
posted it yet, no.
So it's just to kind of get it going so that you can start finding that person. Like, what is the anticipation?
I think it's fair to say that there's in the minds of a few of us, a list of initiatives and objectives that we've talked about. We think we need to get started, and we want to get them started as soon as possible. So that's if you want to call it time sensitivity, that's the time sensitivity of it. There are things that we think have been put on the back burner that we would think we need to move forward with, which is why we want to get this position posted and filled as soon as possible.
Point of information, Mr.
No.
Sacco, personnel chair.
No, you're out of order. You're out of order, Ms. Lauricella.
I'm sorry.
You're out of order.
Mr. Burney is not
Mr.
being
Corsello?
forthcoming. I'm sorry.
Please sit down.
Do your homework.
Please sit down.
Do your homework, please. Come on, we expect you to.
I'm a little confused. At first, I started out saying that I learned that was sort of a typo when it said grants writer yesterday, because we didn't have one. Now I'm hearing that word over and over again, that we've had one. And as far as time being of the essence, the concept, the determination that we needed such a person was in late September, and here we are in early December. What's the rush? I don't know why this doesn't go through committee. What's another few weeks going to do? Let's get it right.
That's up to you.
Mr. Mr. Sachinelli, and then Ms. Smith.
So, yeah, there was some aggressive deadlines with the union contracts going through the final months with the previous council. There was a lot of necessity to put focus on that. It did lack opportunity to address any of these things, and I think it would be the right thing to send this back to committee for proper review, in my opinion.
Ms. Smith?
Yeah, just like a little more clarity on the grant writer versus grant manager, because it seems like it's very nebulous in this description. And there's such a big difference in that job. And if this person is really going to be writing more grants, that's a very detailed, tedious, time-consuming, high-level job that really needs to be paid at a higher level, I think. And so that would be my concern.
Okay. Mr. Kites?
I've always been aware that individual departments handle their own grants, police, fire, especially DPW. One thing and this struck me after, we discussed this extensively at caucus last night, but later on the night, over the years, being a part of, the mayor's task force, energy, environment, so forth, there are a lot of grants out there, and in the past, I've been made aware of these grants and had difficulty finding the appropriate department to help with drafting these and helping out with these grants. And I understand the individual departments deal with their own grants, and it's in their scope, they're annual, they come in, they know when they're due. I get that. I hope, if this gets tabled, gets approved now, and I'm not against, sending it back to committee. There are a lot of new members. It came as a surprise, but regardless of that, I hope whatever the outcome is, that this person will be capable of actually drafting a grant if it's outside the scope of a department. Because there are a lot of grants out there that don't deal with the norm. So,
I would also just point out, to your point, the law department actually does assist with grants in various city departments. Diane Jacobson has done a lot of grant writing work over the years and continues to do so. So just for point of reference, the law department actually does do some of the grant writing functions as well.
Further discussion?
I was just gonna, is Mr. Hempstead's motion still on the floor?
Yeah, we're discussing the motion. Ms. Bowman?
Yeah, so I think we do have I don't have a problem with sending it back to committee to discuss it. And that's just because, not that we're not interested in the position. It looks very cool, and it looks like, and I know we need it. So I think it never hurts to just make sure we get it right, so we don't have to come back. And especially with the questions of whether or not we're eliminating and creating, and whether or not that's all okay.
Yeah, just from the perspective of the position itself, most cities and a lot of other smaller communities do have an information person, communications manager, because there's a lot of information that comes out of a city, whether it's from police department, fire department. Police has a communications person, fire has a communication person, but you want to coordinate so that misinformation is not put out into the community with people saying different things about the same issue. To give you an example, you all know that over the past couple of days, we've had a serious concern about an issue unfolding at McMahon, and parents wanted information. So the communications person from the Board of Education would be the logical person to work with a communications manager to craft a detailed explanation, not only of what had happened, but what is being done about it, to send that home to the parents. So if you had somebody from the police department speaking on the issue, I called a woman today who spoke to someone at one of the departments last night and was told something different than was actually what was happening. And when I told her what was actually done about the incident at McMahon, she was quite relieved. She said, I wish I had known that this morning when I had to decide to send my child to school or not. So the coordination of effort is what really the communications manager will do, pulling information together, and it's not going to be locking out other departments from providing information, but just making sure that we all speak with the same information rather than giving confusing messages. Also, for the grants coordinator position, we had a grants coordinator. We haven't had the grants coordinator for quite some time now. The grants coordinator also in the office of the mayor has an assistant who helps with the coordination of the grants. So in actuality, while we had a grants coordinator, that person also had an assistant. But quite frankly, as we were watching the operation unfold, it wasn't a job that would consume 37 and a half to 40 hours a week. And we realized that there is room for consolidation of effort. One of the things that we try to do is we try to consolidate function and bring 2 or 3 like functions together in an effort to be more efficient and at the same time being more effective. So I just wanted to make those comments relative to the position's need and what the grants coordinator for the city of Norwalk had been doing. And I don't see that function being diminished whatsoever with the new position. Further discussion on Mr. Hempstead's motion to send it back to committee?
And I'll reiterate, I do think it does sound like a great idea, and that it makes sense to get it right.
So Mr. Hempstead made a motion to send this back to committee, to Personnel Committee. All in favor of that motion? All opposed? Okay, so it looks like 14-1, motion carries. Mr. Igneri?
He was late on it. It was 15-0.
Who made it?
A roll call vote.
Oh,
It was all right.
I don't think we need it. Mr. Igneri?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.